Hi, everyone. We'll get started in just a minute. Welcome, everyone. We'll get started in about 30 seconds. All right, let's get started. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I know many of you are connecting from Europe and the US, Mexico, Canada. Good morning to you. Good afternoon to those in Europe, and good evening to those in Asia. Thanks for joining so late. I'm Elissa, and I'm the CEO of Global Food Partners. And we're really excited to have you on this webinar, where we're going to talk about how you can fulfill your cage-free commitment with impact incentives. But I want to first introduce my colleague, Dawn, who you should be able to see her on the camera. Dawn is our Director of Corporate Engagement, also based in Singapore. Many of you probably know her, are already working with her. And Dawn is going to be participating in the webinar, looking out for questions that go in the Q&A. And I've asked her also to jump in if there's anything she wants to add that I miss, because again, she's been working on cage-free implementation across Asia for 8 years now, a long time, one of the first people to be working on this. And she's particularly been working the past couple of years on the impact incentives program as well. So Dawn, wave.
Hello, everybody. Welcome and thank you for joining us. During this period, feel free to send questions, type questions in the Q&A box or in the chat box. And if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. And I see that right now Delphine has raised her hand. So if you would like to type in your question, feel free to do so.
Great. Okay, let me know, Dawn, if the question comes in, and stop me at any time. Like Dawn was saying, yeah, feel free to put your questions in Q&A at any time. We really want this to be as much of a conversation as possible, rather than us speaking for 20 or 30 minutes straight. So we will have a Q&A at the end, a proper Q&A session. But again, please do jump in with questions as we go through the presentation. There are probably going to be a lot of details, a lot of new information. So Dawn will alert me when there's a question. We'll stop and make sure that those are covered. So for this webinar, we'll do the overview of impact incentives. We will cover some case studies from Asia. We'll talk about cost savings, and again, we'll do the Q&A session at the end. The objective of this webinar is really to present an overview of impact incentives and for you to see, evaluate, could this be a good fit for your company in more challenging regions in as far as cage-free sourcing goes. So yes, look at this webinar as see if this could be a good fit. At the end, we'll say what we can do as far as next steps and how we can work together off of this call and move forward with implementation for your different markets in Asia. Okay, so first, we have a poll question. We're just interested to know how many of you have heard a bit about incentives already, How many of you are hearing about this today for the first time? And how many of you just know most things about incentives already? We'll give it about 10 seconds.
Thank you for your vote. I think it's very exciting to know that some of you are already very familiar with incentives, yet you're joining us for this. But 21% of you say that this is your first time hearing about incentives, and 57% said you have heard about it, but not in detail. So very glad that you're able to join us.
Thanks, Dawn. And thanks everyone for voting. So let's see. Okay. So a little bit about us. I won't talk too much about Global Food Partners, but for a little bit of background, we are a Singapore-based consulting company. Don and I are both based in Singapore, and we work across Asia in about 8 markets. And our mission really is to help food and hospitality businesses meet their cage-free deadlines. And as many of you know, most deadlines are by the end of 2025. We also work on the other side of the supply chain. We have a science and extension team that works directly with cage-free producers, suppliers, both to help them transition to cage-free from cages, or to expand or just improve their current cage-free practices. And we started Global Food Partners about 5 years ago, and many of us, Don, myself, co-founder Jayasimha, and others on the team had been working on cage-free, helping food businesses. I was more focused on Latin America, working with US, Europe-based companies, but on their policy implementation in Latin America. Don has been working in Asia for many years. About 5 years ago or so, we met up. We were on a work trip, and we just started talking, and we realized that where we really needed to focus all of our efforts was in Asia. So we were meeting food businesses, again, in Europe, in the US. They were saying, we're doing all right in Europe, we're doing all right in the US, Latin America, okay, but we just don't know what to do in Asia. And we were hearing the same from farmers. There's a story that has always stuck in my brain of a farmer in Malaysia. This was about 7 years ago or so, who was very excited to go cage-free, knew about all of the commitments, went cage-free, didn't really know how to implement best practices, didn't have the training that they needed, and sadly went back to cages. So we saw this, we wanted this to be avoided. Both the food businesses, both the farmers needed support in Asia to ensure they could meet their commitments and to ensure that they could do cage-free well and be happy with cage-free production. And we decided to launch Global Food Partners and support, again, farmers and food businesses and create this cage-free ecosystem in Asia. So if any of you are Schitt's Creek fan, my favorite show, you'll recognize the GIF. Most of us have less than 16 months to meet cage-free deadlines. And that's global and across Asia. And time is ticking, it's passing very, very quickly. And I think we're all here today because we're aware of this December 31st, 2025 deadline, and we want to achieve it. And we wanted to ask those that are on the call, if we have another poll, when your deadline is. And if you could just type in the answer here, are you December 31st, 2025, sooner or later?
The answers are coming in, so we'll just wait a few more seconds. I think most of the deadlines are 2025, but some of you have slightly more time, a few more years to achieve it. So, okay, I think we'll end the poll and share the results. Lucy, are you able to see the results?
I cannot.
Yeah.
I can see 100% answered, but I can't actually see the dates, the deadlines.
Yeah, maybe it's just on my side. So most of you answered 2025. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So we have about 16 months, which there are challenges. We're going to talk about those, but it can be done. So we want everyone to leave this webinar just feeling confident that you can meet your December 31st, 2025 deadline and be 100% cage-free by then. It's doable. All right, so we want to hear from you again. If you are able to share with us, I think Dawn in the Q&A, is that right? Q&A box. Why do you want to be cage-free? What are your 1 or 2 biggest bottlenecks that you're coming across in regions like Asia? And where are these bottlenecks? So we'll give about, let's say 30 seconds, a minute. You can think it through. And then we would love for you to share in the Q&A. And Dawn will share some of the comments that come through.
Yeah, about where the bottlenecks. It can be a particular region in a country or a country that you have more difficulty in. So it's up to you as to how you want to interpret the question. So feel free to type in the Q&A box or the chat box. If it's in the Q&A box, only we can see it. So your answer will be private. Nobody else will be able to see it. In the chat box, we have somebody saying it's not available in Bangladesh, in Dhaka, which is true. And as to why do you want to go cage-free? Somebody typed in the Q&A box that it is the right thing to do. So glad to hear you say that. It is the right thing to do to improve practices on farm. Not just for the animals, but also it's connected to human health, connected to the environment, according to the concept of One Health. Another person typed that the biggest bottleneck is the pricing and availability at scale. So there are some small scale, small holders in some countries, but in terms of commercial scale cage-free production, I think there's still some bottlenecks that we're seeing in some regions. Another person said sourcing issues mostly in Asia and Africa countries. Pricing is also a big issue. Some other answers: infrastructure is not available at the moment, and pricing is an issue. And that's what we've been hearing again and again.
Great, thanks, Dawn. Yeah, so the reality is, and I think all of you that are joining today, whether you shared the challenges or the barriers or you're thinking about them in your head, know that barriers exist. I think, when everyone started working on this issue, it was like, yeah, totally, you can get all the eggs wherever you want, it'll happen. Again, we're 16 months away, and there are real barriers to actually getting those physical cage-free eggs by the end of 2025. And that's the reality, I think, that we're all aware of. So we put here, let's see if the answers are what some of you commented. So my video is blocking. The high prices, I don't know if any of you share a percent increase, but we're seeing in many markets, it can be 50% higher, it could even be 100% higher, 200, 300% higher. So prices really are a barrier. Even if you can find cage-free eggs, I mean, our opinion is that it's just not economically viable for a company to pay 4 times as much for cage-free eggs. Insufficient supply, like some of you commented. Remote locations. I don't know if anyone commented on that. I know I heard that there's a lack of availability in places like Bangladesh or across Asia, Africa, and availability of cage-free eggs at scale as well. So there might be smaller scale farmers, but finding those large scale affordable farmers can be an issue. Other things we hear a lot about from our clients are maybe you have a contract with an egg farmer that just can't be broken. You need to be cage-free in 16 months. Some of you have been working with suppliers for many years. You have existing contracts. That could be for shell eggs. We hear that a lot for processed eggs. And it just simply, they can't be broken by then. Again, this for processed eggs, this is also something we hear a lot. If you just don't meet the MOQ for cage-free processed eggs. So you might need powder eggs, you might need cage-free liquid eggs, and the volume simply is not enough for that processor to be able to deliver that to you. And time constraints. So even if suppliers or farmers want to go cage-free, they're willing, farms need to be set up now. So I'm sure many of you are aware, basically the process of setting up a farm, hens laying eggs, but it can take some time, a year and a half. And these farms would need to be set up like last month to ensure that the eggs are laying the hens are laying eggs, that the farmer is able to overcome challenges that are popping up so that by December 31st, you have those eggs. So regardless, businesses are expected to fulfill by this deadline. So whether it's eggs are so expensive, they're not available in Bangladesh or in parts of Asia, pricing 300% more. Regardless of all of these, it's 5, 10, 15 challenges, companies are expected to meet this deadline and to report on it. And I'm sure many of you have been seeing the growing number of cage-free trackers, benchmarking, reporting that's being required, much and increasingly in Asia as well. So at first it was, we saw this a lot in Europe, US, then in Latin America, but I would say the past couple of years, we're just seeing most of the animal rights advocacy groups launching their own trackers specifically for Asia. And you might all be familiar or have seen these or be participating in them, but stakeholders do expect, and also internally, I know one of you commented that you want to do this, it's the right thing to do. I think decision makers at the company, leadership, they also expect this to be done to basically showcase the alignment that your company has with responsible sourcing and animal welfare. I think, Dawn, is there another poll right now?
Yes. The question is, why do you want to meet your cage-free deadline? Multiple reasons.
Mhm.
Is it because of external stakeholders, or to avoid advocacy campaigns, or to showcase your commitment really to responsible sourcing and sustainability? Or is it because you're hearing from consumers in some countries that they're looking for higher welfare, more sustainable, more responsibly sourced ingredients? That is fantastic. I'm just, you're not seeing the results right now, but I'm seeing a lot of people say that it's because they want to showcase their commitment to responsible sourcing. So if I end the poll now, you'll be able to see the results.
Yes, okay.
So
Showcase commitment and other. Great.
that's so impressive.
Yep, that's great. So I think there's an agreement. I don't think anyone is disagreeing or not wanting to do this. I mean, that's what we experience in our interactions and working with our clients every day in Asia, there's never any company that just doesn't want to do this. It's just that the reality is those challenges that you all shared and that we were just discussing. So there are 3 ways to fulfill. And the first way is how we all traditionally thought that fulfillment would happen, right? You source 100% physical cage-free eggs, straightforward, and done. Wherever you are, in Bangladesh, in parts of Asia, Singapore, Japan, China, source cage-free eggs, have your cage-free supply chain, and done. But I think we're here because that's hard. It's hard, and in some cases, it's just not possible. But again, like you shared in the last slide, you want to do it. So what do we do? So we're really excited about impact incentives because it lets companies bypass all of these challenges: cost, availability, logistics, MOQ, and support farmers who are doing the right thing, who are doing cage-free production, who are certified, who want to continue doing cage-free, in the future. And you're able to impact the same number of animals. So many companies are doing this for animal welfare. Incentives allow you to get the same number of hens out of cages. So we're really excited about this because the impact incentives program can allow any company to achieve 100% cage-free by December 31st, 2025. And so we see this, the gray box is the traditional way of fulfilling. With incentives, you have 2 more options. So what many companies, many clients we're working with are doing, they're planning on doing this, they're preparing to buy the credits, is this second option. It's a hybrid option. They're sourcing physical cage-free eggs wherever possible, and then bridging the gap with cage-free credits. So we like to think of this as a bridging method. Best case scenario, you can find lots of physical cage-free eggs, and you're just, again, filling the gap with credits. The third option is that you fulfill your commitment entirely with credits. And we will show some case studies where this is one of the only options or the only options for certain types of companies. So again, 3 ways you can source 100% physical cage-free eggs. If you can do that, prices are okay, availability is there, the farmers are there, great. If you can't, if there are some places where you just can't or it's too expensive, you can fill that gap with credits. Or in some cases, again, you might want to fulfill your commitment right now entirely with credits until the cage-free market matures. Are there any questions so far? Dawn, are you seeing any questions come in? Or I'll just take like 10 seconds if anyone has any questions.
Not yet, but we have time for.
Okay. Again, jump in, type the question in Q&A if you have any questions as I'm talking. So this solution, impact incentives, is endorsed by all of the major advocacy organizations. This was really important for us. What we did not want launching this program was for a company to come on board, buy incentives, and then face the same pressure, same campaigns, and advocacy organizations not approving this. So you can see here we have a sign-on letter. We got this before launching the program. Organizations like Compassionate Animal Farming, Mercy for Animals, the Humane League, many of the OWA organizations endorse incentives as a way to meet your commitment. So you can report now, you can report in 3 months, you can report December 31st that you're using credits, and it counts as progress and as implementation. All right, so cage-free incentives. Dawn, is there a poll now? Remind me.
Yes.
Okay.
So the question is, what kind of scenario do you think would work best for you to get to 100%? Is it all incentives, all physical? You don't have a problem, you already have physical eggs, or a combination of physical and incentives to bridge the gap? I think so far people are voting, and it's really interesting. Overwhelmingly, people are choosing one option. Oh, that's so surprising. So I will end the poll now so that you can see the results. The one option that all of you shared was a combination of physical incentives. And that's wise.
Okay.
You
Yep.
can-
And again, I think that's what most companies are doing as far as incentives goes. It's rarely that they can find all the cage-free eggs. It's rarely that they're going to fulfill 100% only with credits, but we're seeing this, again, bridging the gap, this hybrid approach. And regardless of the barriers that you all mentioned, like I was saying before, incentives enable you to achieve your cage-free deadline by December 31st, 2025. So regardless of all of these that we've already gone through. You can use incentives for the remote locations. We'll show some cost savings slides in a bit. You'll see you can save, it depends, but there have been cases where companies able to save 5 to 10% compared to sourcing physical cage-free eggs, and cases where companies are able to save up to 60% using incentives. It varies by company, but there are significant cost savings. And just to talk a bit about how incentives work, many of you are familiar with other book and claim credit systems like plastic, soy, palm oil, and already use these types of book and claim systems in your supply chain. What we did was we saw that eggs, for sustainable cage-free eggs, facing very similar challenges as any of these other areas. We studied all of these book and claim systems and saw what they were doing really well, and also what we could improve. And we like to call it the new and improved booking claim model, but for eggs. We won't go into too much detail here, but we made sure that the pricing is transparent, that the farmers get the vast majority of the money that's going to incentives, that there's a pathway to physical sourcing. And what is really nice is that you're able to know from what farmer you're sourcing the incentives. So you will know exactly, you can talk to the farmer, you can go visit the farmer, you can develop the stories, you'll know, okay, that farmer outside of Bangkok is where I'm getting incentives, and be able to narrate that impact that you're creating and have that relationship with the farmer. So some companies are coming on board with incentives. And again, it's mostly that hybrid approach that we're seeing. Unilever announced a few weeks ago that they are prioritizing physical eggs, but in areas where they cannot source physical eggs, they're going to bridge the gap with credits. And Compass Group also made a very similar statement. We are currently prioritizing physical supply in areas where we are experiencing availability challenges. We plan to use egg credits as an alternative. So this is kind of how their messages, their commitment is to physical sourcing and credits. And again, this is just to illustrate this hybrid approach. So you're buying physical cage-free eggs wherever you can, wherever you can't, if it's just too expensive, if you need cage-free eggs at a ski resort in Japan or in an island off of Indonesia, you can offset those volumes with incentives from farmers that you know, and your cage-free commitment is fulfilled. And again, you're able to report this to advocacy organizations in your annual reports, sustainability reports to stakeholders as commitment met. Any questions so far?
Not yet.
Okay,
There's one question about advocacy organizations.
sure.
Will they this as full implementation of the commitments?
Yes. So the advocacy organizations that were listed there, and that was just a snapshot. We have actually, there's a web page that lists all of the supporting organizations. And the advocacy groups, you can read in that letter. We're happy to send it to whoever wants to see it and read through it. Advocacy groups count it as the same as sourcing physical eggs as far as implementation and progress goes. Okay. This is maybe a complex illustration, but this is just to show, and again, we'll go into some case studies that dive a bit deeper. But so problem, this is an example. You have a remote location that cannot buy cage-free eggs from cage-free farms, and their commitment just isn't met. The solution that companies are going for is, again, bridging the gap. So you have your remote location, continue to buy caged eggs from the existing suppliers, and you're offsetting with the impact incentives from cage-free farms, local cage-free farms that are in Asia in the market. And your commitment's met, and typically quite significant cost savings. So first case study, and Dawn, jump in. I know you're working with many of these companies as well, to get them going on incentives and implementation. First case study we want to share is a hospitality company. What's their problem? So there's a hospitality company that we're working with that simply cannot source physical cage-free eggs at remote locations. It's not even about price being too high. Like, there are just some remote locations where they cannot get cage-free eggs delivered. There are other locations where the cost is too high. So they're able to source cage-free eggs in different markets: India, parts of Thailand, parts of China, Philippines. There are parts of Japan where they cannot get cage-free eggs. We've worked with them on supply chain assessments and connecting with farmers, and cannot get cage-free eggs to these remote locations, and parts of Indonesia, some islands off of Indonesia. There are other places like parts of China, parts of Thailand where it's too expensive. So we're seeing these three different scenarios play out. And what we're working on this company with is getting them set up to source physical cage-free eggs wherever you can, where all of these hearts are, and fill the gap where you see the money symbol and the red sad face with credits. So how exactly does this work? The heart happy, we can get cage-free eggs, you buy the cage-free eggs. Straightforward. Wherever it's too expensive, you just can't get cage-free eggs, you continue buying the same caged eggs and offset with incentives. And cage-free commitment fulfilled. So this is the bridging the gap example that companies like Unilever and Compass Group are planning to do. Dawn, anything you want to add about the first case study?
No, that's perfect.
Cool. Okay. So this is something, yeah, we do see a lot, especially with hospitality companies and remote locations. They want to meet their commitment. They're really, like, in many markets, working with suppliers, already sourcing cage-free eggs, but then they're really stuck in some places, the remote locations. So they want to meet their commitment, and those locations will be covered by incentives. Case study 2 is a common one as well. So we're working with a company, a hospitality company that doesn't necessarily have control over all of the properties. They can't necessarily say you have to buy cage-free eggs by December 31st, 2025. There's decentralized purchasing. The commitment was made by headquarters, but because of the corporate structure, it's been really hard for the company to even get responses from certain properties, to ensure that the properties are reporting, are saying even can they not get cage-free eggs. So it's not looking very likely that those properties will end up moving on cage-free, but this company, the headquarters as a corporation, wants to be able to report 100% and comply with this. So there are some places, there are properties, of course, that are doing this. So when we meet with the GMs, the culinary teams, they're excited, they're finding cage-free eggs. And then there are some properties where they're not getting responses. Again, they're not getting reporting, and they just don't have that power to enforce this for those properties. Solution here is also bridging the gap. Those properties that are sourcing physical cage-free eggs, great. And those that aren't, or we say the non-compliant properties, can then, or headquarters or the regional office can then fill that gap with credits. And then you're able to achieve 100%. So again, this is a very common example, and we're working with a couple of companies now to get started with credits to overcome this. Dawn, anything you want to add?
Not at the moment.
Okay, so again, how this works, very similar. The properties that are compliant, they're buying cage-free eggs. Those that aren't responding, they just don't want to do cage-free, too expensive, can't find suppliers, whatever the reason. The regional office or headquarters is able to offset those volumes with incentives. And cage-free commitment fulfilled. And this is the last case study. I want to make sure we have time for questions. It's a QSR chain that we're working with. The problem is they only source powder eggs, and their volumes don't meet the processor MOQ for cage-free processed eggs, specifically for powder. So it's literally everywhere. They're just not able to find a processor that can provide them the volumes they need of cage-free powder eggs. So in this case, what we're doing with this company is fulfilling entirely with credits. I think in this case, the company wants to meet their commitment. They want to be able to report it. And this is the way forward. And as the markets mature, this will change and we'll work with them to then transition to physical powder eggs, but it's not going to happen before December 31st, 2025. So we're going with we're going to fulfill entirely with credits and report 100%. And this works everywhere. You continue buying the caged powder eggs and offset with incentives. Okay. So quickly about cost. The cost will vary from supplier to supplier. We don't set the price. The price is set by the supplier, whether the supplier is in Thailand or Japan or India or Indonesia. And typically the price of the incentive is set by the difference in cost between cage-free production and conventional production. So the cost at farm gate. And it's, again, typically around 30 to 40% more than conventional eggs. And you're essentially eliminating the cost of transportation and logistics, which can be very, very high. And this is sample cost savings. I'll go through this quickly. This is an example from China where we're just looking here, 2 farms, the cost difference if this company goes with suppliers they already know is significant, as you can see in red, 214%, 191% more for cage-free eggs. And we're working with them on this bridging the gap option where they see, this is the whole how we do the calculation, which I won't go into detail. Cost of the caged eggs here, what's the cost of 1,000 cage-free eggs, the cost per incentive, the cost to buy the incentive plus the caged egg, And the cost savings in this case with this company came out to 38% and 27% annually. An example in Indonesia, and we were just kind of talking about this, is we're working with a hospitality company, and some of the remote locations, it's, as you can see, quite high. A lot of that is due to the logistics cost, is to get these eggs from Java to these remote islands, and we're seeing a very, very high cost increase. So working with this company for those locations to use incentives for now until the cost goes down. And also, there's another property in Bali, Bali Kapan, where they just simply can't get the cage-free eggs. It's a remote property, and there's no cost savings because they just cannot get the cage-free eggs, but they're covering that with incentives. And here you can see on the right side, cost savings are on 59%, 54%. And just to talk a bit about who the farmers are, I think that's one thing that really excites us about the program, is that they're all local farmers. We have profiles on our incentives website where you can see who the farmer is, see photos, where are they located, what type of cage-free system. They're all local across Asia. Multiple farmers also in each market. You can see here we have a page of profiles. And the farmers are farmers that we know. We've been to their farms. We have a good relationship with them. They need to be certified to be in the program. The certification has to meet our benchmark for best practices in cage-free production. And this part's important too, and this differs a bit from the other booking claim systems. When you buy incentives, the money goes directly to the farmer. I know some other programs take a big cut. When you buy incentives, you can see here, the incentives, the hotels, retailers, manufacturer, the money is going to the farmer, and you know who the farmer is. You can negotiate directly with the farmer. You'll have that relationship with the farmer, and be able to see that money go into that farmer's hands to incentivize them to continue production, expand cage-free production. So many, many benefits of credits, as you can see, and we always encourage businesses to start now. You're able to, if you start now, you can report progress leading up to your deadline, and you can also ensure that you are 100% by your deadline. So ensure that you're getting the incentives orders in as more and more companies sign up for this, that you're able to secure those incentives. And by December 31st, or by January 1st, 2026, 100%. So quickly, these are the steps. You calculate the total number of eggs you want to offset. We can help with this. Based on the volume, we calculate a price, or rather we liaise with the farmers in the program, and we come back to you with quotations from, typically it's a few farmers at least, and then you pay and settle the incentives, and you're able to start reporting. So that is the overview of the program. I know there are many details that go into the price, the farmers. That's the summary of the program, and we're happy to answer any questions now, and hope that you find this program to be a good fit. If you do, we're always happy to have a call to meet you if you're in Singapore, meet you here, or have a video call, talk about the next steps and how we can help you come on board with impact incentives, and get you more details about who would be supplying you, where, cost, everything. Anything you want to add, Dawn, before we go to questions?
No, that's perfect. I think we already have a few questions come in, so we have 15 minutes left. If it's okay, we go directly into Q&A. So feel free to type your questions in the Q&A box. I think there's a good question here on whether there's QSRs involved in this. I think we just shared a case study earlier about the QSR that we're working with for powdered eggs. But QSRs as well, they operate across countries, different locations, and there are some locations that are difficult for them as well, even if they want liquid or physical shell eggs. The other question is, when do you expect credits to turn into physical cage-free eggs?
Sure.
Does it
That's a
depend-
question. Oh,
does it
go ahead.
depend on countries or regions?
Sure, go for it, Don.
So in many countries here in this region, in East Asia, Southeast Asia, on the whole, we expect the market to mature in 3 to 5 years' time. And credits is often the first step to create that supply. Once you give the orders to the farmers, they're able to produce more. When they produce more, they have economies of scale, and then it becomes cheaper to transport those eggs across the country, and it's more easily available in 3 to 5 years' time. That's what we expect. That being said, there will always be some remote islands somewhere that, it is difficult to convince local farms in those remote islands to start cage-free farms. So in those islands, you may need more time for those farms to transition. But in major markets, we expect 3 to 5 years. Lizzie, feel free to add to that.
Nope, that's, yeah, correct. I was also gonna say, when we've done the like roadmaps with clients, who will likely, be using credits, we'll do the transition plan as well with them. And yeah, like you say, Don, it's about 3 to 5 years.
And fortunately, in some markets here, they're already maturing. So you're already seeing liquid processed eggs coming online. So I think it'll be less than 3 to 5 years in a few of these markets here. There's another question about, does the money going to the farmers who already have cage-free eggs? Or is it going to farmers transitioning to create new cage-free farms? And the beauty of it is that it can be double. Companies can order in advance, and when the farmers receive advance orders, they'll produce the eggs in the next 12, 24 months. So it can support a farm that is a new farm, or an existing farm that just wants to add another barn of cage-free. And when they have enough orders, they can build a barn of, say, 20,000, 30,000 birds, because producers will not start a new barn, if they only have a small order that requires 5,000 hens. Usually they require a lot more. So this will help them get enough orders from different buyers to start a new barn.
Yeah, and there are some companies we're working with who want to involve their current suppliers in this process. So we're able to, in those cases, let's say there's a supplier who's willing to start cage-free, build a cage-free barn, they want to be part of this program. The company wants to support them through incentives, and we're able to bring that company on board, like you were saying, Don. And we have the contract with the 3 parties, and through the transition, our role in that, I mean, we're the facilitator of this whole process, but our role is to also support that farmer. Our science and extension team supports the farmer to make sure that all is going well. That's a smooth process, that we get mortality down, we get floor eggs down, all of the challenges that can come up with cage-free. So we're with that farmer throughout the process.
Yeah. And we also had cases where the clients need to stick to the existing supplier, and the incentives give the existing suppliers advance order, so that they know that there's a definite contract, there's a definite order for them to go cage-free. So whether it's a new supplier or an existing supplier, credits can work to help them transition. One quick question here on whether we have a recording of this meeting that we can share. Of course, we'll share the link with you after the webinar, and also a PDF of the slides, no problem. Another question here, don't you think that the costs increase are linked to the investments from the farmers? And that could be it could disadvantage them if we choose credits. Lucy, do you understand this question? Don't you think that the cost increase for cage-free are linked to the investment make?
Yeah, if I understand correctly, the thing is, it's still going to support the investment of a cage-free farmer. So while you may not be getting that physical cage-free egg in your supply chain, there's a farmer who is getting the fund from incentives and is able to invest in that infrastructure, in cage-free production and getting training to provide you with cage-free eggs. I don't know if that answers your question, but that money does go to a real live farmer in your market, in the region, who is investing in that cage-free production.
And it's the same number of birds, same number of hens that you are getting out of cages that whose lives are impacted. So in terms of numbers, it's the same, except that those physical eggs are not reaching the delivery location that are challenging temporarily. Another question here: how do you ensure that farms that are receiving incentives are using it properly? Is there any procedures to take care of, like to check on accounting?
Good question. And that's one of the things we really worked on and made sure we have all in place before we launched this program. So we want to see this impacting the hens and the farmers and it all working smoothly and have transparency there. So a few things, and Dawn, you can add. One is that the participating farms need to be certified. And we have some checks in place. We know who the certifiers are. When we sign the agreement with the company, there's the agreement that we can see the data from the certification. So we'll know how many eggs are being certified as cage-free on that farm. And the farmer also needs to provide us with their data. So they need to be providing us, okay, we sold 1 million eggs, 1 million cage-free eggs as caged eggs in the open market. So now we have this number of incentives and we do that check to make sure that the calculation is right and that they are not selling more incentives and they've actually been certified by the certifier. We also, so that's one of the ways, like I mentioned before, we know the farmers. So a lot of these farmers, are in our network. We've been on their farms. We are working with them. We continually go on their farms, and we're able to check, of course, if they're meeting certification, then they should have best practices in place. But we're also many times on the farms, seeing about compliance with different things like enrichment, nest boxes, stocking density, other things that need to go into good cage-free farming.
And they need to provide the invoices to show that they're selling the cage-free eggs as caged on the market. There's no double dipping. If they're already receiving incentives from you as a buyer, they cannot then double dip and sell those eggs as cage-free and get double profit. So there's procedures in place to prevent double dipping. And the money that they receive goes towards the price that they're trying to recoup for selling, not being able to sell those eggs as cage-free eggs. And especially in large countries, the farms can be located in areas where they're not close to any buyers. So it's sometimes difficult for these farmers to find an immediate buyer. So this helps them find buyers that were willing to pay the gap between cage and cage-free and help them, continue producing cage-free eggs and increase that volume as well and help the market mature.
Yep, thanks, Don. And of course, I mean, just like with physical sourcing, we can never be 100% sure, and we're not gonna pretend like we can guarantee 100% that the farmers are following the rules. We do everything in our power to ensure that. And we do strongly believe that the farmers that are participating will, and we're checking. That said, there isn't any more risk than if you're buying the physical cage-free eggs, especially when there are farmers that have both. So conventional cage production, cage-free, there's just as much risk that the caged eggs are gonna go into your supply chain as cage-free. Again, I think we're all doing as much as we can so that is avoided through certification or visiting the farms, having relationships with the farmers, so that we can kind of minimize that risk as much as possible and get down to like zero, as close to zero risk as possible.
Yeah. There's another question here on what is the process to get to onboard or enroll our supplier into this program? The existing supplier, if they want to sell incentives, what is the procedure? I think just get in touch with us and we'll work with them.
Yep, we'll work with the supplier. We can all get on a call. We can have a conversation, explain the program, how the certification works, the steps. But yeah, as we mentioned before, we're always open to having new suppliers come on board, and really, really happy actually if like, your current suppliers want to get involved and actually want to be the farmers that are providing you incentives, and we can see that change with your current supplier.
Here, there's another question on, do you expect companies to set a time-bound plan to switch from credits to physical? Or would companies rely on credits forever?
Sure, go for it, Don. I think you mentioned something along those lines earlier.
We really believe that within 3 to 5 years, a lot of these markets that are facing challenges in some locations, it will mature within 3 to 5 years. You will get processed eggs, you will get shell eggs in those locations at a more affordable rate. And so you won't need to rely on credits forever. But very remote locations, again, you need more time than 3 to 5 years. And we really need suppliers in those locations to start. That will be, I think, the short answer to that. The other add-on question is, how do you incentivize farmers or measure their progress to transition to physical cage-free? Lucy?
Sure. So farmers in the program, or I guess, so farmers in the program, they get the incentives when we see that there is cage-free production. So it's that money for the incentives that is incentivizing them to either transition from cages to cage-free, expand their current cage-free production, or to sell incentives based on the production they have right now. So that money for the incentives incentivizes them. And again, they need to be certified. We enter into a contract with the farmer to make sure everything is in order. And that farmer is, if they're selling incentives, it's because they have cage-free production. As far as other suppliers that aren't part of incentives, so we work with many suppliers or producers that aren't necessarily part of the incentives program, but they want to transition to cage-free or expand, and we're able to provide that technical support to them, either on their farms or at our cage-free innovation and welfare hubs in Indonesia and China. So that's the support we can offer. We don't certify, but many of the farmers are looking to get that certification to kind of verify that they are cage-free.
One good question here about antibiotics. Are the layer hens also being monitored to ensure that there are no antibiotics critical to human health used during production? I think this is related to a certification question. So some standards that are good, they prohibit the use of, antibiotics that are crucial to human health. And medicines, antibiotics can only be administered when animals are sick and they are taken out of production while they are recovering. So it's a question on which standards are applied on the farm. And happy to have a chat with you later on if you have more questions. Another question here about, do companies using cage-free credits have full supply chain traceability, and how can they report their progress?
Sure. So they can report their progress, however they are currently reporting progress, or however they do want to report progress in the future. So they can report progress in their, what's commonly seen in their sustainability reports or their animal welfare reports, or just annual reports in general. Or they can report to the advocacy organizations, trackers, benchmark surveys that go out. And you can report credits just in the same way as physical cage-free eggs. The advocacy organizations that have endorsed the program see it as the same progress. So you you use incentives, if you're covering your whole supply chain, either with incentives or physical cage-free eggs, you can report 100% in both places, both internally in your own reports and to external stakeholders.
Typically, how this can be done is, for example, 80%, you're sourcing 80% physical cage-free, and 20% has to be done through incentives, through credits. You can report that you're sourcing 80% physical, and for 20% of your volume, you're supporting cage-free production. So you cannot report that you're sourcing cage-free eggs, but you can say you're supporting cage-free production. And if you like to, you can mention which farm you're supporting, but that's up to you. But the language that we request companies to use, we require companies to use is supporting cage-free production via incentives. Whether you have traceability, you have traceability because you're cutting out the distributors. You're supporting the farm directly that is certified. So there's full, it really helps in terms of having visibility of the supply chain and tracing back to the source of where your ingredient comes from.
Thanks, Don.
Even for companies that are working through middle suppliers that can directly go to the farm to source the eggs. So in that way, it's very traceable.
All right, we're at the hour, so we will close this webinar, but we want to thank you very much for joining us. Again, I know it's very early or very late for some of you. We are always happy to speak with you, set up a call, set up a meeting, and discuss this in more detail and how we can move forward, or really just answer any questions that you have or that pop into your head. Here's my email. Reach out to me at any time. And you can see here, we have a website for the incentives program. You can check that out. And in the follow-up email, we'll provide this page and the recording and some more resources on incentives. But thank you very much. We hope that you found this interesting for your cage-free commitment. And we do look forward to speaking with you more and also staying in touch. And we'll let you know of any future webinars on this topic as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And for those questions that we're not able to answer, we'll get back to you separately over email. Thank you.